Welcome to another episode of our Midweek podcast at First Baptist Sweetwater, where we strive to be the first responders of God's love. I'm here. My name is Jerry Hendricks with my co-host, Stephen Hamilton. Hello, Stephen.
I don't know what to say.
Yes. Well,
You just threw everybody off.
Teak, we talked about names on Sunday.
Right.
And I know we don't normally just jump into our conversation last Sunday, but I thought, why the heck not? This is our podcast. We can do that.
True.
Oh, and we'll a little diversion here. We're coming to you from our new studio, my office.
Right.
Since we did the Zoom studio a couple of weeks ago, or
It was last week.
oh wow, time's moved on.
The ice storm.
Yeah,
2020.
Just kind of feeling adventurous here.
Yep.
And thought we might try this out. You probably will hear some background noise or office noise. It's not quite as secluded as our previous location, but anyways, we're going to try this out, see how we like it. But Sunday we talked about names, and Teak is an ancient Greek name.
Apparently.
Yeah. So
I thought it was Hawaiian.
yeah, for real.
Well, that's where they got it from, Hawaii 5-0.
Oh, true story.
So-
Did we tell that story on?
No, we didn't.
Well, tell us about your middle name.
It was a bad guy on Hawaii 5-0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they just wanted to hope that I'd turn out better than the guy I was named after, and I'm assuming right now we're agreeing that I'm better than the person that I was named for. So we'll see.
And that brings me to my next point.
Mm-hmm.
I did say Sunday that sometimes you feel like parents thought too long about a name for a child, and then sometimes they didn't think long enough.
Right.
We'll leave it at that and move on. So, Teague and I did some research today because Sunday I mentioned among a number of our children whose names I went over and some different meanings. I think two parts to that I learned is it's interesting learning the origin or the country origin for some of these names, because I think what we're accustomed to are simply the biblical names,
Right.
or the biblical meanings,
Right.
or the meanings on the little plaques that we find in the tourist traps,
Right.
which is probably also goes back to
Right.
biblical meanings. But it was interesting, like I think Meredith's name was a Welsh name.
Okay.
And then there was another one, I think Jensen's name was a Scandinavian name. So I found that interesting. I'm kind of, and now I'm kind of in that place where I'm wondering, I wonder if I get into this more.
I don't know.
It was one of those things. I need one more obsession, right?
One more thing
So
you got to do the Bob Goff and cancel something before you start something.
I've been whacking a lot of things out of my schedule.
Well, then you got room.
So yeah,
You got room.
I've got room, I think. Anyways,
Add names.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But I just mentioned the part from Scripture where we know different names were changed. Mentioned Abram to Abraham, Sarah to Sarah.
Right.
And pause right there. There's not much. We don't have much insight on the difference in those names,
Right.
other than spelling.
Right.
So
It's like Saul and Paul.
right,
There's just not much there.
yeah,
The big one would be Peter, right?
I think
Simon
so.
to Peter.
And
now
so-
you're Rock.
Right, and I think my tendency is to make the assumption that that's always the case, that there was a higher meaning
Right.
from either about a person's character or maybe even visioning their future rather than focusing on who they were
Right.
at that moment.
Jacob and Esau.
Right. But here's what I'm wondering. Now, and everybody we can do their own research here, but here's what I'm wondering is that if some of the names were merely a sort of symbolic of a transition,
Right.
because in Abram's case, Abram is not going to be the father of many nations, but Abraham was.
Right.
And so there was just a slight difference, which that slight difference took on a greater magnitude
Right.
when we start to understand God's promise to him.
Right.
And so Sarah's name apparently kind of fell into that same category, I guess, of that change
Right.
from spelling. There was a stronger identification with the Sarah, the spelling of Sarah as we understand it,
Right.
which means queen or princess.
Right.
But
It's not like, it's just significance of a change of the name maybe.
right, yeah. But here's what I like about it is that I think it helps us to get in touch with some of the greater parts of our, I say greater, some important parts of our identity in terms of character and value that could be helpful for us as we instill this in children for future generations, so that we kind of grow in this understanding of who we were created and what we hope to be.
Right.
I think it's worth not only knowing it but retelling it with children and students and younger adults.
Yeah.
And then kind of hanging on to that or holding on to that. And by that, what I'm meaning is researching it a bit as well, so that we start to live up to those character attributes.
Right, and maybe even live beyond them. So like Abraham, if he had just stopped at Abraham and never lived out the life God called him to, we wouldn't be talking about him now.
Right.
Like it would just be a name change that happened. But because he continued to follow God, faithfully following God, then we still tell a story because it's an important part of our story. And so I think that's living up to that legacy and even creating more of a legacy than what maybe was intended.
Yeah. So I think here might be another step for us, is that if we start to embrace this idea of the significance of name and the significance of that revealing character, that we don't want to go around changing everyone's name or changing our name.
Right.
But I think where this could be helpful in the faith community and in our church is if we started to recognize godly character in people and helped people to identify with that character that we see in them. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I'm hearing it. It's kind of like in staff meeting where you got to tug a little bit more for me to get there.
That's too revealing.
But yeah.
That's too revealing to our people. Can we edit that?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking that a lot of times, I have this idea that a lot of times, others are able to see things in us that we're not able to see.
Yes.
And so
that I resonate with, and I hear what you're saying there.
Yeah. So it's almost a way that we speak a value or a character into a person.
Right.
By helping them see what we see.
Helping them see who they are and what they have. Yeah, I think that's, we just started a deal on Sunday mornings preparing for Advent for youth.
Right.
And I asked specific students to lead a group that will create the entire Advent experience for that morning. The adults are stepping back. We're stepping out of it. We're there as a resource, but we're not even in the room most of the time. That way they can do it. And one of the things that was said to me by one of the kids was, I'm not sure if I can do that. And my what I said to them was, I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't think you couldn't do it.
Right.
And that's, I think a lot of times when you and me ask somebody to do something, their response, a lot of times you get the response of, I'm not sure I can do that. I'm not sure I'm good at that. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask unless I see that in a person, because I don't want to set a person up for failure.
Sure.
So.
Well, and I think if we can kind of live in this world of the name and the character, or the association to character, for just a bit, I think that it helps us. It creates some encouragement within the life of the church, and I really do believe that it does give a person a character to live up to.
Right.
And then too, I think we'd also want to be aware that while if you and I were to take the same person and to characterize them and to help them to understand what we see in them, you and I may use different words.
We might see different things, right. Yeah.
But either way, it becomes something that hopefully people could identify with and hang on to and live up to.
Yeah, and I think it's also a word of caution that we make sure we're careful when we call things out in people.
Right.
That we call out the things that are edifying and uplifting and strive to being that image of God, as opposed to calling out the things that aren't necessarily the best part of them.
Yeah, and so a part of what I didn't go into Sunday, I think I may have mentioned it last week on the podcast, that Sharon had a hard, fast rule of that's not what their mother named them.
Right, and you talked about that.
Yeah, and that was something that she practiced because she teaches younger elementary children, and it's easy for them to come up with names or to characterize. And she was always real big on that. But even in our family, so we didn't do nicknames for our children. That wasn't something that was a part of where we were.
I got called a lot of things growing up, but I don't remember like a nickname. Like I got called every animal's name that we had at the house. I mean, you know, when you're in trouble, Mom goes through all the names that are in the household until they get to yours.
Yeah. Well, there was a time, I think I was in middle school, which would be about a good time to have that identity search. And my brother, who's a lot older than me, 10 years older, he had gone to the academy for highway department for DPS. What do you call those officers? Trooper, yeah. And he had a nickname, and at that point I decided I needed a nickname. And here's what I've learned is that you can't nickname yourself.
Yeah, George found that out too, Seinfeld.
A Seinfeld reference, hey.
We used to do that a lot.
There you go. Well, I think it's good, and obviously by our deeper than normal discussion for our podcast.
Right.
But it is kind of where we landed and what we were talking about last week. So this week we have that turning point where last 2 Sundays we just kind of introduced the ideas of asking for God's blessing, and we've seen it through the examples of 2 Old Testament people. So now what we want to start to do is understand how we start to live as a blessed people, and with that bless others.
Right.
Now, Mark Batterson calls that flipping the blessing. And I guess another way we could say it is you become a channel, really, of God's blessing to other people.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think as we kind of move into this in the next couple of weeks and then leading up to Thanksgiving weekend, I think it will give us the opportunity to really examine ways and maybe creative. I mean, do you find some people feel stymied because they're not creative in knowing how to bless others?
Yeah, I think so. But I think part of it is the more you look for those opportunities and you don't put limits on it, the more easily accessible they are, or easier to just see and do.
Right.
And it's not always monetary, but especially when you're dealing with people who are in service positions, like working at a restaurant or whatever, that type of thing, it's easy to bless them in a way that is memorable to them. I used to be a waiter at Cotton Patch. That was one of my first jobs. I loved it. But the worst days to get blessed by people were Sundays.
Right.
You wouldn't believe the number of Christians who leave you a note telling you how much God loves you, and they think that's a way of also dropping the amount of tip you get. Frustrating. And so I try to go above and beyond in blessing waiters and waitresses and things like that, because I know what it was like. And so it's easy to see those things. But I was talking to Nathan Humphreys, who works over at the Shire, Brookshires, and he did my curbside takeout one day, brought it out to me. He said, "Teak, I just got to tell you, a lady gave me a $20 tip today." Well, we don't think about tipping the people who bring our groceries out to us, but it changed his whole outlook on his day.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool to hear how that had happened, and it opens up that new avenue of how can you bless people when they least expect it.
Well, and this morning you were talking about a conversation you had with a call center.
Right.
And when you say call center, you know that probably a person is calling with something that's not right. That was the case.
Right.
That you were trying to get corrected.
Right.
But you did something that was unique. But it was a unique way to bless somebody.
Right. Yeah. Well, in general, whether they're calling me or I'm calling them, I try to never be that person that they get off the phone with. They're like, "Man, that was a rough experience." I wanted it to be the experience of they go home and they tell their family. And so, yeah, I was talking to somebody and trying to get something straightened out, and I just told them about my Jell-O that I was making for Wednesday night that has SpaghettiOs in it, and she started laughing, and that created a conversation where I explained what I do and what we were doing Wednesday night, and she said I was going to be the conversation when she got home. And so I want to be that in a good way. I don't want them going home and being like, "I can't believe I had to deal with this guy today." I want it to be, yeah, he had a problem. I was able to address it and fix it, and it all worked out.
Right.
So.
Well, I thought that was fun hearing about that this morning. And I think what brought it up, no, it was before I realized that I saw that concoction in the fridge this morning.
Yeah. So
So,
Wednesday night, better together.
Quick announcement: don't miss Wednesday night. If you thought Among Us was a good night, don't miss this one. Okay, I mean, tell your students, don't miss this one.
Yep. We'll even take video so you can see what happens.
So we're kind of on a roll here with Wednesday night stuff.
It's been fun. I mean, and the thing is, this semester always goes so fast, and I feel like it has gone quickly.
Well, Sunday we're going to be talking about how we can look at blessing others really for the next 2 weeks. And one of the things that Mark Batterson says over and over is that God doesn't bless us to increase our cost of living, but rather our cost of giving. I think I may have I butchered that a little bit, but our standard.
Right.
God doesn't bless us in order to increase our standard of living. God blesses us to increase our standard of giving.
Right.
And I think that's the spirit that we go into these next 2 Sundays with, is learning, particularly in a season where there's opportunities for us to give, acknowledging all along a couple things. One is we may not be able to give as well at this time because of all that's gone on economically. But at the same time, we may, if nothing's changed for us, we may be able to bless someone else who is struggling because of the times we're in. So I think all the more reason for us to be discerning and open to what God's doing in our life and in the life of those who are around us. But I'm excited about Sunday and the next couple of weeks developing these leading up to Sunday where we do communion together. And we're still working out the details on that, on how that will exactly be
COVID taken care of.
Safe for our folks, but still meaningful.
Right.
That would be on the Sunday before the Thursday of Thanksgiving. So, anyways, it's a good conversation today, and enjoyed hanging out with my friend Stephen, and hope that you'll.
Apparently, I've gone through the name change.
Yeah. Maybe so. I'm speaking that into your life.
The Godfather has changed it.
But anyways, we look forward to being a part of your worship on Sunday. If you can be with us live, that would be great. Or join us on live stream. Don't forget to check out our Bible study. That's an easy download on our website at fbcsweetwater.org. And Teek and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
See you then.